And thank you to this month's Our Community Stories featuring the Merrick Moore neighborhood. I've been working with Bonita Green in this area for several years, and I'm so excited for her to share her history, and then also the speakers that she's also brought with her. I think you'll really enjoy it. This is brought to you by the City of Durham's Neighborhood Improvement Services. My name is Laura Biediger. I'm Equitable Community Engagement Strategist with the city. You can learn more about our team's work, the community engagement team, on our website, durhamcommunityengagement.org. And again, today's speakers are Bonita Green, Algin Holloway, and Willie Lee Thompson. And this space is really about having the residents speak and share their stories. So I will turn it over to them. Bonita?
Thank you, Laura, and thank everyone at Neighborhood Services for allowing us this space to speak about our community, Merrick Moore community. I was born into this community. My family has been here since the 40s, and my father was the president of the community club back in the day, and now I am the president of the Merrick Moore Community Club. So there's a long history here, and with me I have Mr. Algin Holloway. He's also going to be sharing his story here, and Mr. Willie Lee Thompson. So I'm going to first start with Mr. Willie Lee Thompson and let him talk about when the community started and who the people were who moved into this community. So Mr. Thompson, can you tell us your story of Merrick Moore? Is Mr. Thompson with us? Okay, well, let's go to Algin Holloway. Algin, we'll start with you. Can you tell us your story of Merrick Moore, how you came about being here?
I've been connected to this community pretty much all my life. Most of my relatives live in this community, and my father grew up right down the road on Redwood Road, which comes into what was then Fishdam Road, which is now Teak Road, and our former church was down that way. And this community started in soon after World War II was over. A real estate developer divided what had been a farm, I guess, into lots and sold them to mostly returning veterans. And the community was started by mostly members of several families. Most of the families had belonged to Mount Zoar Church, which moved up here on Teak Road in later years. But there were the Thompsons, the Greens, the Cruises, the Gosses, Tabrons, Pettifords, and various other families that moved here, and pretty much everybody was family connected. And most of the people at that time belonged to Mount Zoar Church when this community was established. So later, they had a school down the road, Rock and Roll School, which moved up here in this community. And the community did not have a name before then, but it became the Merrick Moore community.
So let's talk, Algin, about like the men that came back from World War II, and they were buying these lots out here and developing the properties. What skill sets that these men have, and what did they do?
Most of these people that went away to World War II had left the farm and went in the army, and some of them went far and wide, all the way to Berlin. And as a matter of fact, the first pictures I ever saw of concentration camp victims was at my uncle's house before I ever saw it on TV or anything. They liberated concentration camps, and pretty much everybody. So they came back, and a lot of them had gone to to veteran school, and the ones who had finished high school and had started college, then they took the GI Bill and went to college. Those who did not went to various trade schools. My father went to bricklaying school and carpenter school, and my uncle went to barber school, and then I had another uncle by marriage who went to carpenter school and bricklaying school, and Reverend Parker did the same thing, and your father went to hairdresser, right, and carpenter and plumbing. But anyway, and they
Yes.
came back with these skills and built their houses. Now, a lot of these houses were built from barracks, from Camp Butler. When they tore that Camp Butler, only lasted about 3 or 4 years, I think. And with the end of the war, they sold the barracks where the soldiers had lived. And I think for $100 or $200 or something, somebody probably can do bring you up to snuff better than me. But anyway, my uncle at 2123 Cheek Road is a yellow a house with brown trimming. It was built from a barrack from Camp Butler. My grandfather built a house on the farm down on Redwood Road from the barracks, and he painted his house white, but his stable and outbarns were still left military green. And that's pretty much how this community got started.
Yeah, because this was a large farming community. Actually, the picture on the screen now, that land in the background, the Wilkerson farm is where that is, and that's right next to my family property. And you see a picture, a big cow there, and you see it's kind of blurry, but my two brothers, Sam and myself, are in that. But the Wilkerson property, everything that's kind of green and lush in the background is now where Milan Woods sits. And the picture at the top, are my 3 sisters, Melinda, Brenda, and Jackie in that picture. So, this was a rich farming community, and it was very connected. And I remember growing up as a little girl, because I was a daddy's girl, but be around him, and a lot of the men, and when they were doing on their jobs, my dad would take him, doing, any sort of carpentry, building, or anything like that. And the different men had different skills, right, Algin? They would kind of help each other. Yeah, they would kind of help each other build the homes out here.
And I know when, especially, your father had a good shop with all the tools and stuff. And my uncle Otis Day, when my father would want to build something really nice, he would get one of them to help him. And that's how they went. They helped each other. And they pretty much, as a matter of fact, when my father built this house, they pretty much had a house raiser and on the pattern. And all the bricks was laid, and the chimney was laid in one day on my father's house, and the rest of the work he did himself with the help of various people around here, including Uncle Otis Day, Sam McCrae, Mr. William.
Yeah, I remember them.
All of them.
Yeah. I remember they used to gather down at Mr. Biddy Parker's garage.
Yes. Now, Biddy Parker, let me see. I don't really remember what his name was, his real name. But the Parker,
William Parker.
William Parker. And most of them were mechanics. He had a brother, he had a shop on Hyde Park. That was, it'll come to him in a minute. But anyway, he had a shop, and his nephews, and who's my uncle, Charlie Parker. He was a mechanic, and also Thomas Wade Walker. So in the Parker family, they were all pretty much mechanics.
Yeah. And that was one thing that was cool growing up in this community, that there were a lot of entrepreneurs that had skill sets. This screen is like, my dad went to the Shades Beauty College, when that was one of the things he did with the GO, and he went and he took up barbering. And Dazers, I just realized recently, used to be in the Hayti Heritage Center, very near St. Joseph's Church. And then she later moved to downtown Durham. But a lot of things that I have done in my life has been following my father's footsteps, because I also went to DeShazer Beauty College and I had my career, in cosmetology. So that's one thing that makes me very proud, because they were in this community who were entrepreneurs. They were carpenters, plumbers, they were electricians, there were auto repair shops, there were like little grocery marts. Remember Mr. Hopper's? Reverend Harper's little market.
Right. Now, in the Harpers, I'll have to ask Mr. Thompson, but the Thompsons came in 1940, and I think the Harpers might have been there about that time before they started developing the neighborhood with the other people. I think the Harpers, who was his wife was a Cruz, and so that whole family was up here, which they had their family farm down on Freeman Road, between Cheek Road and Southern High School is. Now, really, that's kind of an extension of this community, because there were various people in that first 1 mile that were connected to this community too.
Mm-hmm. So it's just amazing, the history of this community. Mr. Thompson, so I cut off, and we're trying to connect with him again, but I think his family first built their home community in 1940. And this community was a community people were able to buy their homes. It wasn't, you were telling me, it's like not developed by a developer, right?
Yeah, it was the lots.
The homes out here.
Oh, me. Okay. Yeah, the lots were sold to the people, and the people built their houses on an individual basis. It was not a cookie cutter community that somebody built and sold the houses to everybody. People built their lots, they bought their lots and they built their own houses in whatever manner that they chose. Much unlike today. I don't remember. I cannot remember anybody in the last. As a matter of fact, 40 years ago we built. I think my daddy built his last house 40 years ago for somebody, and sadly the lady just passed. But most of the people after that time had bought a house from somebody who developed the whole neighborhood and the whole 9 yards. So there's no hardly individual people buying a lot and building a house.
Well, yeah, that's what makes it so unique out here, is that, when we started out, everyone building their own homes and helping each other build homes. So, and remember, like Cheek Road, no, it used to be called Fish Dam Road, and this image is like really, really unique. It's an image of a couple celebrating their engagement, and I believe the gentleman was a Goss. I believe he was Johnny Goss, and the young woman, her last name was Holloway, but it was with an A, Holaway instead of OWY. And this was their engagement, and it was down Fish Dam Road, very near where the church, the first church, Mount Zor, was at. So, kind of the history of our community as well, because Mount Zor Church started off further down Cheek Road than where it is located right now.
Johnny Goss was also, as I stated at first, there were a lot of Gosses who built here, his children and her children. Loretta Holloway was my grandfather's sister. Okay, the picture you see before me now, looking like American Gothic, is my grandparents. Sitting in the middle of the back row is my grandmother's grandfather. To the right is Uncle James, who started Holloway Funeral Home in 1954. On the left is Annie Day, who married Otis Day, who was a great carpenter and built houses all around Durham. He was a contractor. Down on the bottom left is Uncle Bill, who started. He was the helper. He helped Uncle James start the funeral home, and he started a cab company who we joined, and we was in the cab business for 50 years. Next to him is Aunt Reefer Richmond, and she married Wilbur Richmond from Walltown. Right in front of her is Fanny Parker, who married Charlie Parker, who was Biddy Parker's nephew. Right behind her is Uncle Thomas. He lived in New York. Most of my life I guess I was a baby when he went to New York or whatever after World War II, but he lived all of his adult life in New York. Right to looking at the picture to the right of him is Aunt Beatty Sanders. She's the oldest child, and she was born in 1908, and she died in 2004, 5, or 6, something like that. And she came back.
Now, let me ask you this. Let me ask you this, Algin. That house in the black and white picture, where was that taken at? This photo, where was it taken at? Do you remember?
Well, down on the farm, we call it the old house. I think this was the old house. My grandfather built 2 houses that got burned down. And
Okay.
then he built the last one in the like late 40s and early 50s from Camp Butler. And this was on one of those houses. And then they had an older house, and when the other houses burned down, they would go back and live in that house. So he built his last house. And next to that is next to her is Viola Philpott, and she married William Philpott. And next is Uncle George. He was a mechanic and partner in the cab company and the funeral home. Down at the 2 people on the front is my father with the nickel zone. He died in 2018 at the age 91. And right to his right is Mary. He died in 2020 at the age of 91. And up on the okay. And to the right of that, a more modern picture is some of my father's siblings.
Yeah. So, and the thing that I found like really unique in your family was there was a lot of entrepreneurs and business owners, like, the cab company and the funeral home. But, I remember like your dad, Reverend Ralph Holloway, we always call him Daddy Ralph. And so, he would, being around my dad a lot, the thing that's unique to me about him is that he would always have those little tiny rolls of lifesavers, those little short ones. And he would always have one in his pocket for me, So that was always the cool thing. He was like a really sweet and kind man. And then, we can talk about some of the other families in the neighborhood. Was the Day family and the Cruz brothers.
Oh yeah,
the Cruz family.
The Cruzes had a farm on Freeman Road. Okay, now this community really stops at Junction Road, where Kazan store was, but to extend it, for one between Peak Road and the present site of Southern High School, a lot of people that were connected to this community lived there. In the deep farm around there was Percy Peak. He had a small farm right there. His sister, married a Currency, and they had a farm just before you get there. Also on that road was Hayward Lawrence. He had property there. The Harringtons had a small some small acreage. The Cruzes, and that's pretty much it. But it extended all the way from Peak Road to the present site of Southern High School, Chandler Road. On the left, you see the Day brothers, Howard Day. Now, Nona Faye Day, she died a couple years ago at age 92. That's her mother and father was in the buggy. And Johnny Golf was having fine horses. Now back then, people had mules. You didn't have nobody had nice horses. But Johnny Golf was known for having nice horses and buggies, and later on in the 30s, he was known for having nice cars. Right at the one on the end is Paul Day. They lived on Center Street. Later, they used to live on Peak Road, but Paul retired a year or two ago, a couple of years ago, or whatever, as a captain in the Durham Police Department. And he pretty much, his son lives in the house now, who's also a police person. and on Center Street. The next one is Billy. He passed. He was in the Army and then worked for IBM. The next one is Doug. He worked for the state. Next is Thomas. He worked for the post office. He's still living today. And down at the front is Howard Day, who's the brother. Okay, who's the brother of my uncle. So we got some.
Okay.
We don't have double first cousins, but we got double first and third cousins. You know.
Yeah. So a lot of the families in the community were really closely connected to one another.
Howard Day and his brother married two cousins, my Aunt Annie and Faye Day, who were first cousins.
Okay. Cool. So, talking about leading into the school system, this is something like my mother was, some people will call her a pack. I'll say she was a historian because she kept everything. And this was something, it was a kind of like a little guide for schools, and it's called Your Superintendents, Your Schools. And it was put out by the superintendents of Durham County Schools. And this particular issue was printed in 1944, August of 1944. And the thing I found really interesting is looking at the schools and how they were classified. You had your white schools, which were Hope Valley, Bragtown, Hillendale, Glen, Mangum, Holt, Rougemont, Oak Grove, and Bethesda Grove. And then you had your Negro schools. And so, which at the time Moore wasn't in existence, it was Mill Grove, and there was Rocky Knoll, Little River, Rougemont, Page, and Pearsontown. And it's just interesting looking through this entire book. It talks, everything is classified between white schools and schools, and white teachers and Negro teachers, and the salary, the pay, and all of that, it's really interesting to kind of look through this. And it's actually a pretty cool piece of history that I just kind of stumbled upon. But down in the bottom, corner, a lot of people have never heard of Rocky Knoll, as a lot of people, they didn't know anything about Merrick Moore either. But, this was the original Rocky Knoll School, which is down Cheek Road. And I remember Mr. Thompson saying that he, would have to walk from Center Street to Rocky Knoll to go to school. And it was it more like elementary and middle school type of school. And it was about a 5-mile walk that he had to make. Do you remember anything about, Algin?
No, I only remember my cousin George Goss went there in the first grade, I think, before they built
okay.
Merrick Moore. But these are now you find these black school people. I guess they were the school board members or advisors or something. But you have some prominent black people back in those days. Now you look at Mill Grove, they had John Harris, and I think I remember some of the Harris families. Then they had it was J. Sam Holloway, but I think there's J. Sam Holloway who lived on who lived over there on it'll come to him in a minute. But anyway, he had very prominent children. And he had one of them was a high official in St. Augustine College. One of them Hillary was the president of a national fraternity, and Josephine taught at Merrick Moore, and probably the most famous of them all went to school. He went to A&T years ago right after World War I. Most of these kids went to A&T, but probably the one that was most famous was Prince Holloway, who was a blues singer who sung with John D. Holman and went toured the whole world singing blues.
Okay. That's actually well. Merrick Moore High School came to be, and I'm gonna let you finish at how Merrick Moore High School came to be.
Okay, Merrick Moore High School came to be because Rock and Roll burned down. Now, how that happened, I do not know. But anyway, So they came up the
And what about Mill Grove?
and built Merrick Moore School. And Mill Grove was on it was Ward Road at the time. It's on Denfield Street. If you turn off Roxbury Road onto Denfield and take a sharp right behind the advanced store, you'll find Mill Grove School was. And this is class of 1966. Merrick Moore's last graduating class was 1969, and my brother graduated from Southern in 1970. Merrick Moore had a great sports program. A lot of people don't remember it. But in 1965, 64, and 65, Merrick Moore won the high school 3A basketball championship. And I know a lot of you have heard of the Remember the Titans, right?
Mm-hmm.
Remember the Titans. That's E.J. Hayes High School in Martin County. Well, Herman Boone coached against the Merrick Moore in the 60s. And when Merrick Moore won that championship, Herman Boone, who was played by Denzel Washington, was the coach of E.J. Hayes High School in Winston, North Carolina. And I think the first Black scholarship football player at UNC was it'll come to me.
It'll come to you.
But anyway, he was from E.J. Hayes. Ricky Lanier came to University of North Carolina in 1967. There had been a couple of guys that had walked on the football team. Lonnie Ford and a couple more people. I think Carl Atkinson, who had a great career as a lawyer and still is in Fayetteville. But he was the first Black scholarship player at UNC, and he had come from E.J. Hayes under Herman Boone.
Mm-hmm. So, and this is, Merrick Moore Elementary School as it sits today. Most people don't remember, they only think of being an elementary school, but they don't remember when it was a high school. I actually went to Merrick Moore. I attended there as an elementary school student. And I remember when I was in about the 4th grade, that's when segregation began. And because elementary school was upstairs and the high school was downstairs. And then they have a separate wing for, special education students. It's important to retain that history. It was the Merrick Moore Tigers. The colors were green and gold. And it was cool because, we lived very close to the school, but because, the road along Cheek Road was like pretty treacherous to walk on, there was a path that we could cut through the woods, and we used to walk the back way, most of the time. But, I have a lot of fond memories of attending here. The other thing that was really great about Merrick Moore, a lot of people in the community actually worked at the school. So it was a place of employment for people. Like my mother worked in the cafeteria, Miss Bostic, Miss Doziel Scott, and worked there. Mr. Watkins worked, he was the,
Preston Harper?
I didn't hear you, Algin.
I said Preston Harper worked there.
Preston Harper worked there, as well as Mr. Watkins. And then, I'm trying to think. And I think there was another person that worked. I can't remember the name right now, but a lot of people in the community worked there. And it was cool because you don't see, especially not anymore, where, there's employment close to where people live. You have to catch a bus or anything, but it's really good. Mr. Pollard, yes. Miss Pollard lived in Bradtown, actually, which is another great connection. And so it's actually a lot of fond memories that I have there. And I think it's, it's great to remember the history of the school because, even though the community came first, the community didn't have a name until the school came. And Merrick Moore, named after 2 really, really important historical figures in Durham. There was Dr. Aaron McDuffie Moore, who was the first Black doctor in North Carolina, but he was also in investments. And then his John Merrick, they was the part of investment group from North Carolina Mutual. And between the two of them, the school was named after them because they were such important historical figures within this community. Okay, so talking about the church now, Mount Zor originally started down Fish Road, and this is an image of the first thing that's located about 2.5 miles east of where the church currently sits. And so this is the original structure. And then you see some of the original items, the podium, bell, and the pot belly stove. So, hey, Algin, can you talk about this a little bit?
Yeah, Mount Zor Church, I remember going to the old church. It's on a little extension of Redwood Road. Redwood Road crosses Cheek Road and ends at Fletcher Chapel Road. Well, on that portion between Cheek Road and Fletcher Chapel Road is where Mount Zor Church was. And we don't really know where it came from or who gave it, but when they got ready to build a new church and sell the land, they had no deed. So they had to get affidavits from people in the neighborhood who were really old and saying during their lifetime, they'd always remember that as being Mount Zor Church property. On some old maps of Durham, they would call it Missouri Church. And that's also important in looking up anything, go by sound and by spelling. Because people who were took the records were barely literate. And also about Merrick Moore, you were talking about Merrick Moore before. People don't ever remember it being anything but elementary school. I was talking day before yesterday to William McNeil, who was a graduate of Merrick Moore in 1964 with me. And he went on to become the superintendent of Wake County Schools and become the national superintendent of the year. And he came back and to do some consulting work, and he had to tell the people that Merrick Moore, the people that worked for Durham County Schools, the Durham school system, that Merrick Moore had been a high school. And if you work for an organization, you should know a little something about history. And I talked also to Miss Thompson Jackson yesterday, who was a teacher there, and also Miss Trump. So I hope they're tuned in today.
So that's actually really great because a lot of people don't know that. And so this is a picture of Reverend Griswold when the church, a lot of Black churches and maybe white churches too, I don't know, but they do this thing called a deed burning. Is when you've paid off the final mortgage, make the final mortgage payment, you get the deed. And so there's a deed burning ceremony. And this is that. But the other really great thing is in 2015, the church actually celebrated its 150th anniversary. And so adding 2021 in there, so it's about 166 years old now. But there were proclamations that came into the church from President Barack Obama, from Pat McCrory, who was the governor of North Carolina, and also from Mayor Bill Bell, in proclamation celebrating and honoring this church for this milestone of being 150 years old. So you were there during that time, don't you? You want to talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, we had the 150th anniversary of Mount Zor Baptist Church, because as far as the only real reason I could remember the date of the church, there were no records back then, but my great-grandfather is told, it's been passed down through the family, that when the Civil War got over, he and his mother had lived in Tarboro. And we can guess how they got there. But anyway, they came back to here. They were born here and they came back. And then right after the war was over, and Mount Zor Church had started a little bit before then. And so that's the date that we use for the beginning, for the founding of Mount Zion Baptist Church.
Yeah, the church was kind of like the nucleus of the community between the church and school. Everybody in the neighborhood, well, most of the people in the neighborhood went to the church, some went to other churches, but they definitely went to the school. And so you had that connection in both ways. And there was, everybody knew everybody, and in the community, and everybody helped out everybody, and everybody the thing that sticks out to me is like today, people don't want to you to even look at their kids crossways, but back then it was the village scenario. And so if you were misbehaving at somebody else's home, then they would chastise you, correct you, and send you home. And then on your way walking home, your parent would get a phone call. Then you got corrected again once you got home. Oh my gosh. But then so Reverend Harris and Reverend Parker were pastors at Mount Zion, and they actually have the distinction of being the pastors who serve the longest terms of service at Mount Zion.
Yeah, on
you want to say something?
Oh yeah, I have a whole lot of vivid memories of Reverend Parker, and Reverend Thomas I didn't, but Reverend Thomas was from Roxborough, and he pastored at Mount Zion during the 30s. And then I remember him. He passed away, I think, from sudden illness, stroke, heart attack, or something in 1954, or somewhere there. But he was a principal, and he owned a store up on the off 49 highway, right near Lawson Catholic Church. And he was a prominent in and he brought a lot of modern ideas and things to the church. And matter of fact, he's the one that got him from down in the country up here, because the neighborhood was up here. So he's
okay.
to move up here to relocate the church. Reverend Parker, he was a bricklayer and a carpenter and everything. And on Saturdays and stuff, when I wanted to do something else, him and my dad always had me making mortar and stuff like that, and and all this stuff. And then sometimes we would hunt together. But anyway, we were closely connected down through 3 years.
Yeah, I remember Rocky used to live over in Bragtown of Dearborn Drive, and his wife, Miss Novella, and daughter Loretta. Miss Novella was was a member at Cameron Grove, but she would come to Mount Zion, I think about at least 1 or 2 Sundays out of the month, but sang in the gospel choir, which, this is a picture of the gospel choir as it only started under the instruction of Theodore Freeland.
And she's
under this picture.
Behind it.
She's behind Mr. Freeland with the glasses on. I can't hear you.
I said, it looks like her right behind Theodore Freeland.
Yes, that's Miss Novella Park. She was a sweet lady. She was like a second mom to me, and largely a lot of
Are you up there?
Largely a lot of people. Me?
Are you up there? Yeah.
Yeah, I am. I'm on the front row. You see my whole family in that picture.
What's your boy named Jonah? Right there on the front.
Yeah, William Henry Joyner. So on the front row is Loretta Parker first, and then it's myself.
The gentleman on the left, 2 people from the end, he was in a recording quartet called the 4 Interns, and they recorded on, I think, Peacock Records, and their biggest hit was "The Blessing." So he directed choirs at Mount Zion, and at one time Mount Zion had found about the best male course anybody ever heard of, because of his direction, and he died suddenly in 1971 or something like that. Willie Parker, who was in the male course, who lived right there, where Darren Day lives now. and
Yeah.
he got killed in a car wreck. And they
Oh,
had him
wow.
on the Tito Freeland came to the wake and went home and died.
Oh my gosh. Oh my gosh. This was one of the big parts of the community, growing up. And now the community, so much has changed in the community, but we're still trying to grow and move on. And the community club organization, I think it started in the early 50s. There was a Merrick Moore Ladies Club was first, and the Merrick Moore Ladies Club, um, a lot of the moms in the community were members in that. I know Miss Maud Thompson was a member, Evelyn Goss, and then Miss Brown, and a lot of ladies in the community were members of that. And what was really cool, the ladies would do, and they would fundraise to be able to do the things that they do. But if someone like the lady of the house was sick and could not take care of the family, what these ladies would do would actually go into the home, and they would clean and cook and shop. They would bathe the woman if she couldn't bathe herself. And I mean, just everything. They would go in, and depending on the degree of illness, how many times they went in per week. But until she was back on her feet, they would go in and take care of her, make sure the families were provided for. And then when the men started the Merrick Moore Community Club, they were actually about making sure exteriors of homes were looking good and appearances. And so, they would go about and help people to make sure that, their housing and everything was kept up to date, and that their properties look good. And they also, and the women's club, the ladies club, and with the men, and they started doing, a larger thing, and they were advocating to get the streets paved out here. They were advocating for getting street lights, because these were dirt roads back in the day. And so they really, really did a lot of advocacy and worked with the city to bring some modernization out into the community, even because back in the day, everybody was on well water, and you had a tank in your yard, and to get the city water and sewer brought out was a huge thing. Paved roads, the curbing and everything like that was done through the community club. So we had a little bit of a lull in activity. We started up again in about 2017 or 2018, and started working with the property that the club had bought from Mr. Dan Robertson. They started working. They bought that property, I think, 60s, right? In the around 66 or so. Do you remember?
Probably so. And they got to be the name the Samuel L. Green Community Garden was because at a meeting we were looking for a name. And I had remember years ago your father had told us to keep them, don't lose the property, keep the property going. I moved away and then, didn't do nothing about it. And, everybody else scattered this stuff. And then you came back and got us back together and stuff. So, feeling guilty, I suggested that I might want to.
This is your way of paying homage to my father.
Yeah, but I don't know if it'll get it off there. I don't know if it's right, wipe my slate clean or not. But anyway, I didn't want to get but anyway,
he would forgive you.
Always kept that close to his heart, and kept it up, and he might be still living there if somebody had helped him. But anyway, so that's how the garden got to be named after him.
Yeah, and so lastly, we were kind of expecting if Miss Carolyn Eileen Watts Welch, I don't know if she is here or in the meeting, but she is the
Miss Grant, Miss Bonita, she's here and she's here.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, great. That is wonderful. So I am going to introduce to you Miss Eileen Watts Welch, who is great granddaughter of Dr. Aaron McDuffie Moore and John Merrick.
Hi, it's good to see you guys. Hello.
Good to see you. I'm so excited to hear you speak.
Well, I didn't realize I was making a formal presentation. What do you want me to talk about?
I want you to just tell us more about your great grandfathers, because we know that the community is named after them,
Right.
but I just want to know a little bit about them.
Well, this picture that I see here, I can start there. You know that the person on the left is Dr. Moore, and the picture is taken in his offices, his medical office on Crook's Corner, I believe, is the place. It's in Durham. So the next person is John Avery. You know him from John Avery Boys Club, the guy sitting to the against the wall there, going towards the right from Moore. And the next person is John Merrick. And then on the wall to the back, to still our left of our right of John Merrick, is his son, Ed Merrick, who was my granddaddy. And then the person on the far right is C.C. Spalding. So Ed Merrick worked there from the time he could work in high school, and they were organizing. And then he left and went to A&T. He finished A&T in Greensboro. There's actually a building, the math building is Merrick Hall, if you know A&T's campus, is named after John Merrick, or Ed. I think it's named after Ed Merrick. They named it after him, having been a graduate of A&T. And then he came back to work in the company and grew up from, sort of just learning to becoming the vice president and treasurer when he retired in the 70s. C.C. Spalding, you've heard the three names, Moore, Merrick, and Spalding. Spalding is Moore's nephew. So Spalding's mother was Moore's mother's sister. I'm sorry, was his sister, Moore's sister. So Moore came from a family down in Columbus County where they were educated, they had churches, they were freed early. His grandfather had been a slave and he was manumitted. And his grandfather married an Indian woman. And then they had 10 children. And that's where the Spalding name in Durham comes from, that family, because of the 10 children, only one was a girl. The girl was Aaron Moore's mother. So his mother married Israel Moore, and they had 8 children. So he had 7 sisters and brothers. And then his mother had these 10 brothers who had many children. They were a farming family. They acquired a lot of land, all contiguous property, but many of them, the next generation, left the farms and migrated, many to Durham, because he was here and he would allow them to live with him until they finished NCCU or finished high school. When C.C. Spalding came here, he finished Whitted School in 8th grade at age 21, because there wasn't that level of education, public education in the county. So he got his basics done. And then the story about John Avery is that John Avery came to Durham hearing about North Carolina Mutual and opportunities, and he had an education. If I knew I was going to tell this story, I would have had more facts in front of me. But he did.
That's okay.
And this is in the archives. There's information about how he came became sort of a person who sat with the three to help them. And he did a lot of the writing of C.C. Spalding's speeches. So
Okay.
C.C. Spalding became the third president. The first president of the Mutual was Merrick. And Merrick had come here. He was a slave. He was born a slave. And he grew up in Clinton, North Carolina. And his mother and he came to Durham after being in Raleigh at first. He learned the trade of bricklaying, brick hoarding and bricklaying, and actually was employed laying bricks at Shaw University early on. And that's where he met Moore. And Moore was at Shaw, having come to Shaw from Columbus County to go to medical school. Shaw had the Leonard School of Medicine at the time, and he came because he wanted to be a teacher, a better teacher. He was already
Okay.
He had already had normal school level education, and those were schools that were founded by Northern people to help educate freed slaves, help them with literacy, and to become teachers. And so he had that education, but he wanted to be he wanted to be a professor. You heard about Shaw, the train up and went to Shaw. They talked him into joining the second class of medical students. And it was a 4-year program that he finished in 3. And he was in the first group of people, white and Black, who had to sit for medical boards. And he's passed the boards with flying colors. He made the highest grade. We have the data.
That is so great. I thank you
just
so much,
smart,
Ms. Welch, for contributing what you have on such a short notice. But it's good to know. We knew their names, but we didn't know
Well, I
really
just
who they
want to
were.
finish
And
with
so thank you so much for being able to contribute that.
Can
Pardon
I have
me?
one other sentence, or you need to go?
Sure.
Yeah,
we're
wanted to
we're
say
gonna go to questions, but go
how
ahead.
they both became my great grandfathers.
Mhm.
Ed Merrick, John Merrick's second son, married Aaron Moore's oldest daughter. So my grandmother is Lada Moore Merrick, and Ed and Lada are my mother's parents. So
Okay.
that's why they were her grandfathers, and they're my great grandfathers.
Oh, okay. Okay. Well, you know what? To me, it's just very heartwarming to hear you share your story, and to also, you've written a book about Dr. Aaron Moore. So, looking forward to reading that as well. Thank you
It's
so
available in the
much, Ms.
libraries as
And
well as retail, and I have copies here. If people want autographed copies, they can make a donation to the Durham Colored Library on our website. And we'll deliver them an autographed copy by the author.
Okay.
But the library has several copies as well.
Okay.
Public.
So Fallon, I'm going to turn it back over to you.
Sure. Thank you so much, Ms. Welch, for coming on short notice and giving us that bit of history. We loved hearing about that. I'm so appreciative of it. Thank you, Mr. Holloway, for sharing your stories. They're amazing. And I just love to hear everything you've got to say. And thank you so much, Ms. Green, for pulling this all together and sharing your stories about that. We do have just a few minutes for some questions I wanted to get. A couple of people had made some amazing comments in the chat. There were a few people who wanted to reach out to you both personally, just because they had an aunt that used to go teach at Merrick Moore. And I think I sent you their contact information. I also wanted to ask, because we had quite a few questions, just really quick, could you tell us what the new name for Fish Dam Road is?
Cheek Road.
Cheek Road. Okay.
Cheek Road.
Sure. A lot of people had asked.
Yeah, it used to be Fish Dam Road. Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you. And Railroad Street, is that called something different today? Railroad Street?
Railroad? Is it maybe it's Junction Road, because the railroad runs along Junction Road?
The railroad
Okay.
street is in
Yeah.
town. It's not out here.
Okay.
Railroad Street is where?
It's in off Liberty Street, if I'm not mistaken.
Okay. Okay, thank you. They also wanted to know where the Holloway Funeral Home, where the original location was for the Holloway Funeral Home.
It was the original location was in Hillsborough. My uncle started that funeral home in Hillsborough in 1954, and business was bad. He only buried Bonita's uncle that one year, and then he came back to Durham where there were 4 or 5 funeral homes on 308 South Austin Avenue, right behind right beside a funeral home that Joseph Barnes and his brother ran. And they would move across the street and finally ended up on Highway 55.
Thank you so much. Ethel wanted to know Hillside School, the elementary, the first one was developed. She wanted to know about that. She was thanking you, Miss Bonita, for the treasures that your mother stored up. She wanted to know about Hillside School. Yeah.
Algin, do you know? Because
About what?
I wasn't born.
About what?
About the first,
About Hillside.
yeah, the first Hillside High School.
Oh, I don't know, except from what I learned from people that what is now Whitted School used
Okay.
to be Hillside, and what was the old Hillside used to be Whitted. And I would ask my former classmate, Ms. Welch, if she would give us some enlightenment on that.
Okay. That was, we are like 1 minute over, and that was, I think I got through most of the questions that people had. Oh, where was Merrick Moore High School located? I forgot that one.
It's located
It's where the school is now.
Okay.
It's where the elementary school is. That was Merrick Moore High School.
Okay.
Because it combines Mill Grove and Rocky Knoll. So yeah, that's Merrick Moore. Where the spot that it's in now, that's where it's always been. It's just now it's an elementary instead of a high school.
Thank you so much. I think we got through most of the questions. I know we're a minute over. I'm going to turn it back over to Ms. Laura Biediger. And thank you guys so much for all your questions. If I missed them, if I didn't get to them, we're so sorry about that, but we appreciate your comments in the chat. They were amazing. So thank you, everyone.
Alan. And thank you to everyone who helped to put together today. I'm sorry Willie Lee wasn't able to join us. It is a loss because talking with him during the rehearsals was really amazing. Although I think Algin has enough stories for 2 or 3 people. So, so you were all definitely able to hold on your own. Maybe we can have, we'll be able to reconnect with Willie Lee when we bring all the neighborhoods we've done so far this year together in June. I also really wanted to thank the NIS staff who helped to put these events together every month, Cheryl McDonald, Alan Thompson, Jenny Bell, and most recently our communications intern, Carolyn Kajia. I think I pronounced that right. But definitely also our neighborhood improvement services department leadership, Constance Stansel, James Davis, and Linwood Best. And then of course we couldn't do this without the residents who come on to share their stories. Bonita Green, Algin Holloway, and then Willie Lee Thompson. And a special thanks to Bonita for helping to collect all of the photos that you saw in the PowerPoints. Oftentimes I will collect those, but Bonita has really been working hard, and I know Algin also contributed. So thank you for all of that. And I'm sure we'll be able to connect people who may have been on today who have other things to share with you all. Coming up, we have our community stories will be Friday, May 28th. I think that is the Friday before Memorial Day, but hopefully you will all still be able to join us. Right now, I think we will be having East End on for that event. We're still trying to get a couple of extra speakers confirmed, but if you have any recommendations for residents who have stories from East End community in Durham, please let us know. And then we also are looking for, sharing and continuing to share stories going forward. So Gearwood Park, Stokesdale, Albright. We will also be doing some stories around WD Hill and Algonquin Tennis Club in July. So if you're interested in sharing on those, please let us know. There's our website, our Facebook, and phone number. And all of these events are available online. If you go to the City of Durham's YouTube page, you'll be able to see all of the videos that we've done so far. And we started in July of this last year. So this is our 10th one. Is that right? Yes, this is our 10th one, which is really exciting. And they're all amazing. And then they're also available on the Durham Television Network. So I think that's normally DTV8, if you have a chance and flip by and see that. And again, thank you to support from the city and our department to give us the time and space and support to make this happen. Thank you for joining us.